Hi, and welcome to the very first episode of the Handheld Gaming Podcast. And in this podcast, we'll dive together into the fun, playful, and seemingly complex world of handheld gaming PCs. From the Steam Deck to the ROG Ally and everything in between or above or below or after or before. I think. At least that's the plan. But before we dive into the weeds with mods, upgrades, and game reviews, I want to answer the most important question first. Why this podcast and why now? If you're anything like me, gaming has been a part of who you are your entire life. But how you game changes. For years, my setup has been very traditional. First it was a Super Nintendo with friends, later the family PC, and then for a long time it was an Xbox. The first one, the 360, lounging on the couch with a hangover when it was the Xbox One. A bit later, a powerful gaming PC came into my man cave. Well, actually that was between the original Xbox and the Xbox One. It came in my man cave for best performance, but in recent years, especially since the launch of the Steam Deck, something has changed. I'm getting older, life is getting busier, and I noticed I was sitting on the couch more and more often. But this time it was different. Picture this. My wife is watching a movie on the big TV, and I'm sitting next to her. Not with a phone, but with a fully fledged gaming PC in my hands. Not in another room, we're still together. And chatting. And in the meantime, I'm playing Cyberpunk 2077 around the Balatro, or I'm racing through Mexico in Forza Horizon. That possibility, that flexibility, is why handheld gaming has been reinvented for me. The Steam Deck was the catalyst. It brought gaming back into moments I otherwise wouldn't have had. No hassle of booting up a big PC for half an hour, just pick it up and play. But for me, it doesn't stop with playing games. I'm a hardware enthusiast to the core. I can still remember being a kid and being allowed to open up our very first beige computer case with my dad's screwdriver. The smell of electronics, the tangle of cables, it was magical for a small kid like me. And yes, I've blown up my 286 motherboard back in the day. It was part of the experience. I built my very first PC completely by hand from individual parts. And that was a Duron 800. That was such a long time ago. And that 286 I just referred to, I blew that up by soldering some wires to it and just putting it into the wall. That was a very fun experience because the EEPROM on there just lit up and went poof, and that was the 286, our first computer ever, a old tulip, if anyone knows that machine. But I built my first Duron 800 PC a little while when I was about 16 or 17. I worked myself, got all the parts by myself, just bought and built the whole thing. That passion for tinkering, for understanding how a computer works, and making it better, even if it's only the looks. That Duron 800 got a very nice plexiglass window with nice lighting, not RGB mind you, nice neon tube lighting. Again, paid by me, it went very fast because of the lighting. Nice and blue. I even changed out the LEDs, I think. It came with red LEDs and I put in blue ones. Just to let you know how far I went with that. I even thought I would be an electronics engineer. Never became that, not my thing, but this part I really liked. And that's exactly what makes handheld PCs so incredibly cool. They are not closed. They're not black boxes. They're invitations. They invite you to open them up. You get a Phillips screwdriver and you're off to the races. For example, right now, I'm working on a project that sums it all up. I'm rebuilding my original Steam Deck LCD, and it's getting an OLED screen. A completely new white housing, you can even see it in the video in the background, and wonderfully physically clicky buttons. You'll see that whole process of rebuilding that machine, or deconstructing and reconstructing that machine with its new screen in a later video. But it perfectly illustrates what this passion is all about. It's about taking a fantastic device and making it truly yours. And that brings me to the ultimate goal of this podcast. I want you to get, you, the listener, excited about this kind of hardware. There's often this idea that computer hardware isn't complicated. And it is, but not at the level we are working with it. It's can be a bit scary and you might break things. And yes, you really can break things. But mostly it's incredibly fun because you make it yours. It gives you a sense of satisfaction that you don't get from just being a consumer. You make a device like this your own. Blindfold me and hand me several Steam Decks and I know which one is mine. I can just feel and hear it. There is another important reason. Handheld PCs are destined for a long life. If you dare to play with the hardware. When a joystick gets stick drift, which happens a lot, how many controllers have you destroyed in the last few years if you game a lot? Whoops. With these handheld PCs, you replace it. It's very, very simple. A battery that's losing charge or not giving the expected longevity, you put in a new, better one. An SSD too small, you upgrade it. This is a big difference compared to, for example, a Nintendo system, where everything is locked down. If something goes wrong, you're dependent on the manufacturer, and we all know how good Nintendo is on that front. But I know for a fact that it can even be, you can work around this. I still have a broken MacBook Pro from 2014 at home. And the screen is defective. The screen isn't even on there anymore. The rest of the hardware still works perfectly. And I still even use it for specific tasks. Mainly for testing websites with an external monitor. Sometimes I just need to know how stuff looks on macOS because it has its own quirks. And I'm not going to buy a new machine for that. For the few times I have to boot that thing, I'll just give it an old version of macOS, which is kind of current. And I'll put, with a lot of extra work, I'll put in a recent macOS version on it so I know how it works on the older ones and on the new ones. I'm not going to use every single version of macOS. But that device is more than 10 years old by now. And it still has a purpose because I adapted it. Even though the screen doesn't work anymore. And handheld PCs are going to be exactly the same. They're durable, flexible platforms for the future that you can game on for decades. And in worst case, use for a lot of other things. And that's what I'm going to talk about in this podcast. The games, the hardware, the mods, and the philosophy of ownership and identity. I hope I've been able to share some of my enthusiasm with you in this story. This was the first episode, and it's a kickoff, so I'm just going to leave this a little bit rough. But in the upcoming episodes, we'll dive deeper into specific projects, the latest news, and of course, the best games to play. Thanks for listening to this very first episode of Handheld Gaming. You can subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platforms so you don't have to miss a single episode. And for all the videos, guides, and articles that go with these stories, you can visit handheldgaming.net. Be sure to let me know what you are playing on your handheld, if you have one. And if you don't have one, let me know which one you want to see or test. Anyways, take care, and you see me next time, and I hope to hear from you.